Well, hello to my Born Forward family. Haven't been with you all in a couple weeks, but I'm super excited to be back with the group. Listen, you may not have been born in it, you may not have been born with it, but you were born for it. Welcome to our Friday empowerment session. I apologize, we're a few minutes late, having some difficulties with Facebook, not wanting to let me go live and YouTube as well, but we're over that hurdle, and we're past that roadblock. So super grateful, super grateful to be here today. Listen, I want to share some information that I think may be helpful to you. Um, Certainly has been helpful to other people that I have shared it with, and I think one of the important things uh, with Born For It for me is to make sure that people are empowered, that they have tools necessary to reach their purpose, right? To fulfill their call, um, to do your thing. And so sometimes the things that we do in the body of Christ can seem so mysterious, and people tell you, well, um, grow spiritually. And you're like, well, how do I do that? You know, pray. Well, how do I do that? And sometimes we can be mysterious with the things of God, but I love to take these opportunities to really talk about practical truths that you and I can use on a daily basis. So I want to talk about something. Hey, Nzingo, I want to talk about something that may be new to some of you all or may not be new to others. I want to talk about temperament. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of temperament before. Temperament. The more that we know about ourselves, the better. I tell couples in premarital counseling, in particular women, they say, I asked my fiance, does he love me? And that's a good question. You want to know if somebody loves you. But I think a far superior question is asking that individual, do they love themselves? Because if they love themselves, then it is a great chance that they have the ability and the capacity to love you. It is out of their love for themselves that they'll treat you right, that they'll prioritize you, right? So the more that we know about ourselves, the better we're able to function. And nobody is able to tell you and I how we work with clarity, understanding, and preciseness like the Creator God. God created you and I. So everybody else's opinions, their theories, their concepts, their constructs are secondary to whatever God has said. And I thank God that He left an instruction manual behind called the Bible. So I want to talk about something really quickly that's biblical, and I'm not going to go into all of the details, but I want to give us an overall idea of this thing called temperament. So when we're talking about temperament, what is temperament? Write this down. Write this down. Temperament is the inborn part of us. It determines how we react to people, places, and things. If we were talking about biblically, in Bible vernacular, this would refer to our soul, which is composed of five components. You all hear me talk about that all the time: our mind, our will, our imagination, our emotions, and our intellect. In temperament, there's three areas which I won't go into today that we can look at our temperament, right? Inclusion, control, and affection. Inclusion is our surface relationships. Control is how much control we want over us, and how much control we want to exercise over other people. And then our affection, that would be our one-on-one relationships, right? So, but our temperament is the inborn part of us. If you could think of temperament like a handprint, like it would be God's handprint on you and I. It is your unique fingerprints or handprints that God has given you that distinguishes you from every other human being. So if you got your hand and you looked at your handprints or your fingerprints, what is so fantastic about this is that God has never made your fingerprints. He's never made your handprint. And guess what? When you leave this earth, he's never going to duplicate them. It is a sign to you that you are unique, that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, right? And that you are a part of God's creation. So, when we're talking about temperament, we're talking about the inborn part of us. So, y'all know a lot of times we use words synonymously, like personality, temperament, all those types of things, right? And so these terms aren't synonymous. Like these terms we actually can use independently of each other. These terms we actually can use and give them very different definitions. So, when we are talking about temperament, we are not talking about personality. We're not talking about character. So, I want you to think of this, you all to think of this as a tree. When we see a tree, what we pretty much see is the top of the tree, the leaves, all those types of things. We see the trunk, but we don't see the roots, even though we know the root system is there. Just like an iceberg. The term tip of the iceberg came from us, from the idea that we only can see 10% of the iceberg. Really, the other 90% is underneath the water. So you and I have a temperament. It is the part of us, the invisible part of us that God put there, God's fingerprint, his handprint, what he created, our strengths and our weaknesses, the things that he put in us that came from him, and they're not visible to the natural eye, but they are important because they dictate our behavior. So like the root system, they guide our lives, they guide our decisions, they guide our relationships. And I'm going to talk about what those 5 are in a second. Now, when you come into this world and you learn about your surroundings and your environment, right? You're growing with intelligence, with information and knowledge. Whenever a person is acting on their environment and they're learning, they're developing something called character. Character is simply me learning from my environment. But what I've learned from my environment can be very different. Can be very different than how I'm actually wired by God. Okay, I can be living in an environment that appreciates something like theft, crime, and violence, and God has, by my temperament, made me a peaceable person. So everything in me will be fighting against what's happening in my environment, even though I learned that that's what's necessary, right? And then we have something called personality. Personality is the social mask. This is what everybody has an opportunity to see. But it's not the real us. It's what we put on to survive, our social mask. So, if our temperament and our personality are in direct opposition, we'll be frustrated in life. I forgot to read the scripture for temperament. I want to give you the biblical basis for that. So that's Psalm 139, 13 and 14. It says, "For thou hast possessed my reins, thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well." So we see that God has formed and fashioned us in our mother's womb. All right, I forgot to read that scripture on the onset. So remember, temperament, the inborn part of me, it's the part I cannot change. It's how God created me to be. There's certain things about me, certain needs that I have that God has put there. I can't change them. Right? That's who I am at the core. When I get under stress, when I get under pressure, that's who I'm going to deviate to. That's what I'm going to deviate to be. Character is what I learned from my environment. I learned different skills and ways to communicate with people. I go to school and gather information. I learn about my world, right? Some of those things are consistent with my temperament. Some of those things aren't. Then my personality is simply the part of me that I want to show people to be liked, to get approval, to be accepted. It's a social mask. But when my personality is in opposition to my temperament, it is a recipe for poor mental health. So let's talk about the first temperament type. I want to talk about the first temperament type. Um, let's talk about the choleric. The choleric. So the choleric, which really means hot temper. This is an aggressive, task-oriented individual who is people friendly. Their main objective is to get the job done. These are leaders. Cholerics are leaders. So if you normally don't mind being out front, you get in a group or an organization, you find yourself primarily leading the group, making the decisions. You have a natural inclination and orientation towards people, like you're sociable. People like you. They like putting things in your hands because you're going to get it done. A part of your temperament may be that you're a choleric, right? So all temperaments have weaknesses and strengths. So I'm going over, in particular, the strengths of each temperament right now. So cholerics are aggressive. People know that they're in the building, right? They know that they're in the group. They're going to make their presence known. They're great at performing tasks, and they are very, very adept at delegating and getting people to move towards a vision and a goal. A lot of pastors, leaders, motivational speakers, a lot of them are cholerics. But at the end of the day, the end justifies the means for them. So when a choleric is in their weakness, they can run over people for the sake of getting the task completed. That's why it's important for each temperament to know their strength and their weakness. Each temperament has a need. The greatest need for the choleric is recognition. They need to know that somebody has recognized the fact that they got the job done. So when I say need, I literally mean need. This person needs for somebody to high five, to data boy, to give them certificates, awards, anything that recognizes their effort. If you are a choleric and you're in a job, you operate in a business, you're part of an organization and a group that does not give you recognition, you will sense the frustration and possibly the anxiety of being a part of that group. And if you're in a relationship and you're a choleric and your spouse doesn't recognize your efforts in that relationship, it can lead to frustration. Our next temperament is what we call the melancholy. The melancholy. Actually, melancholy means dark or black or low mood. So the melancholy, these are our thinkers. These are our genius-prone individuals. And I hate to say it, and usually cholerics and sanguines get with melancholies, right? So cholerics are fast-paced type thinkers. They don't really get into long-term thinking, so they can miss a lot of things. So, but our melancholies, they're going to be right 90% of the time. Why? Because these individuals have a gifting to test and see the loopholes in situations. They are natural problem solvers. All right? They can come off and appear as loners. They are mostly introverts. They don't have a large social circle like the choleric does. The choleric is trying to get as many people on their team as possible to get the mission completed. Melancholies are loners. They feel very deep. They are loyal. They have great needs around truth, loyalty, dependability, and reliability. They're looking for those things in a relationship because they offer those things, right? They're normally quiet. They can socialize, but their socialization tends to be deep and intimate. In their weakness, they can be extremely perfectionistic, right? And they can require things of people that aren't easy or aren't realistic, or aren't easy to obtain. Because they're genius prone, um, they can really look at other people and really wonder why they're not like them. All right, so that's the melancholy temperament. These individuals have a great need to be alone to recharge because they spend so much emotional energy thinking. They have to recharge every day. They their statements are more of, well, I thought, as opposed to the sanguine, who we'll talk about in a second, which responds by saying, well, I felt like. A melancholy is going to be, I thought, right? A sanguine is going to be, I felt. So these individuals can be very, very prone to depression, drugs, and alcohol because they can be so caught up in their thoughts. All right. All right. Let's look at the phlegmatic. The phlegmatic is where we actually get. It comes from our word phlegm. It means to slowly move, and so our phlegmatic temperament is unique in the fact that it can actually attach itself to another temperament. Somebody can be a cleric phlegmatic. So the phlegmatic would just simply temper down whatever that main temperament is. But a phlegmatic temperament can also stand alone. So the phlegmatic is the diplomat. This is the person that's easygoing. If you are a peacemaker, peace at all costs, you avoid conflict, right? You're probably a phlegmatic in one of your three areas, whether it's your social relationships, your control, or your one-on-one intimate relationships. These people are very detailed. They can work tedious jobs for long periods of time without ever getting bored. These are the people that let water run off of their backs, right? They can focus on a task for long periods of time and not need anybody to come along and help them. They can do it independently. They also are very, very stubborn because once they see one way of doing a thing, they tend to lock horns and lock on to that one way of doing a thing. They can appear insensitive. They can appear insensitive because phlegmatics tend to have very flat affects, very neutral looking faces, because they are always, always, always trying to guard their energy. So they can appear lazy and are often, when they're in their weaknesses, natural procrastinators because they pick and choose where they want to use their energy. But they use their energy in situations where they feel like it's appropriate. This can be very, very irritating to the sanguine temperament or the choleric temperament who wants to get the job done and go, go, go. Phlegmatics move at their own pace in life, right? So if that's you and you've been able to really keep a relatively good facet of mental health, nothing really bothers you. Other people get upset and angry over stuff that is not a big deal to you. People usually come to you as an arbitrator or a mediator. You're the person that they call for prayer. You're the stabilizer. You're the person that's considered to be even keeled, right? You're not the person that gets hot-headed. People can depend on you to be the diplomat. You probably are phlegmatic. All right. I sure will, evangelist. All right. So that's our phlegmatic. And then we have our sanguine. Our sanguine, which in English, which really translated means hot-blooded. Hot-blooded. So your sanguine is going to be the life of the party. These are the most oriented types of people. If you really, really, really love people, you're energized by being around people. Like you hate being alone. Your desire, your thrive, your passion comes from being engaged with another human being. You're probably a sanguine. These people hate being alone, hate being isolated. Why? Because their greatest need is for attention. So they're usually going to do things to be liked, approved, loved. Sanguines usually wear very bright colors. Melancholies usually wear dark, gloomy colors like blacks, like in browns and grays. Sanguines, we call the peacock temperament. Right? They're going to have on bright blues and yellows and bright lipstick, and their vehicles are going to be bright with lights. Everything that screams, "Look at me." They are the ultimate people's person, but they can be in their weakness prone to severe temper tantrums and angry spells. Right? They most of their relationships, the sanguine's relationships, are surface relationships. They don't form a lot of deep, intimate relationships because they don't need to. They just want to get attention, give attention, and get attention. So sometimes these individuals can be aggravating because when they come in the room, you know it. Now, when a sanguine understands temperament and their strengths, this can be used to a great advantage. If I was talking about the church scenario, they are great evangelists. They can gather people. They can get people together. But I'm talking about an organization. This person is going to be fantastic. They're going to be superb as a marketer. They're never going to get tired of going from place to place, meeting to meeting, meeting new people, engaging new people, bringing business back to the organization. They're going to be great at that. We can go into grave detail with each one of these temperaments. I'm just giving you an overview. All right? And then our last temperament. Our last temperament is what we call our supine temperament. Our supine temperament. Supine actually means to bow down. These are going to be our ultimate placaters, people pleasers. These are the servants of servants. They will do anything for anyone. They have a balance of being people-oriented and task-oriented. Right? I have a family member who's a supine, and she can do anything and everything and helps everybody, right? And gets a great satisfaction out of doing it. So these people are gentle, they have a humble spirit. So sometimes they can be taken advantage of because in their weakness, these people don't know how to say no. Right? Even though they want to say no and they don't have the time and the resources to do what you're asking, they don't say no. So guess what happens? They do things that they don't want to do. They overbook their priorities so they don't get to the things that need to be done. And so they get frustrated and they get angry at the people who are asking them to do things. And these people don't even know that this person is overwhelmed because they haven't developed a lot of times the ability to express their needs. So people think that they're okay, and they're not. They think that they're okay, and they're not. So you constantly have to check in on the supine. The supine's greatest need is for approval, to know that I've done it right. Right? Great servants. Great servants. If we were talking about church, these people would be great in the helps ministry. If we were talking about maybe a secular context, these people would be individuals who would be great secretaries, administrators, people who work in human resources. They'd be fantastic for those positions. All right. So I hope that has been helpful. One more time, we're talking about temperaments, the inborn part of you that God has made. Right? That's who you really are. You learn character and you put on personality to survive. But my temperament is who and how God has made me. It's his handprint on me. And as close as I can get to operating how God created me to be, I will find not only satisfaction, but I will find fulfillment in my life. I may do a part 2 of this to go into more depth about how these temperaments can work in 3 areas of our life: inclusion, control, and affection. Right? Inclusion, my surface relationships. Control, how much control I want over me, how much control I want over another human being. And thirdly, affection, my one-on-one relationships. So I am a cleric in inclusion, surface relationships. In control, I am a phlegmatic. And in affection, my one-on-one relationships, I am a sanguine. 3 different areas, right? So maybe I'll do a part 2. Y'all let me know what you think. If you want me to do a part 2 of that, I will. But until then, you may not have been born in it. You may not have been born with it, but you were born for it. I'll see you back here next Friday. Again, y'all be blessed.